I definitely had a birth goal of a home birth and a natural birth. My body started to push and I started to really yell. This just loud sound of all the energy that I had been experiencing through the first part of my labor suddenly being liberated. I was squatting there and that's where I began to give birth in that squat position.
I had my children on the floor. I was on my favourite blanket that my grandmother gave me on the floor like a cat.
And I realised in that moment the potential of what our bodies can really do as women.
Like I could feel his head, I could do my own internal, like, yeah, his head, I could feel it.
I was in tears, I was just in tears and overwhelmed with gratitude.
Hi, and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast, the podcast that is bringing embodied birth wisdom from women from all over the world sharing their natural birth stories. Don't forget to subscribe and download so that you can always have access to these empowering and positive natural birth stories. Hi, Phoebe, and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing so great. Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you. I can't wait to hear about your birth story. So take us back. I want to know, like, when you became pregnant, was that a
Mhm.
conscious conception? And also, did you already know how you wanted to birth? Like, what was your view of birth then?
Yeah, I definitely had a birth goal of a home birth and a natural birth. It was a conscious conception. My husband and I had been together for almost 10 years at the time. So we had spent a lot of time thinking about it and a lot of time really preparing for when and how we wanted to get pregnant. And it just happened at the perfect time, it seems.
Beautiful. Did you do kind of any prep beforehand or
hmm
yeah?
Yeah, so I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner, and so it was very important for me to make sure my diet was good and make sure my health was good. And so I was taking herbs and supplements and probably overdoing it a little bit in the lead up to getting pregnant. But, I went into the pregnancy with my body feeling really strong and my nutrition being very strong and my spiritual practice being as aligned as it could be for the time.
Beautiful. Love that. That's that's just so fantastic when women have that opportunity and knowledge and time to do that.
hmm
I love I love having you women on sharing that inspiration for anyone who's like kind of in that trying to conceive or maybe thinking soon, maybe next year, or like, that there's
Right.
this opportunity to actually,
hmm
really enhance both your fertility, but also the quality of the egg and the sperm as
Yes.
well for the man, right?
hmm Yeah, I definitely took the 0 trimester to heart and really took at least 3 months of preparing for pregnancy. And if I'd gotten pregnant sooner, I don't think I would have taken that 0 trimester, but it took about 3 months of trying and building up my body and my husband building up his health, and it just happened right on time.
Beautiful. All right. So you have conceived. So how did you find out you were pregnant?
I actually do the fertility awareness method. So I never took a pregnancy test, which was exciting in its own way. So I just waited until I had 18 high temperatures above my cover line and knew I was pregnant. Um, I also started to feel it right about when I knew I was pregnant. I went swimming in a river and I just had this feeling like, okay, something feels a little different here. I think I'm pregnant. And I waited just a little bit before telling people, but I still told people pretty early.
Beautiful. Love that. Okay. And what was your first reaction? Was it to go out and find a midwife, or were you going to birth or prep for your birth? What was your journey?
Um, Well, I started getting morning sickness pretty early on at about 5 weeks. So I feel like I didn't have enough time to really start preparing for a midwife. I was just in bed immediately. Pretty rough. So I don't feel like I had all the time I didn't even get my midwife until I was about 15 weeks pregnant. I was just in bed pretty much the whole time, even the whole first trimester, just very sick. Um, so I was living in a very small house at the time, and my husband had just started building us a house. So he broke ground on the house in May, and I got pregnant in June. And so I had a lot of dreams of, okay, I'm hoping that the house is going to be ready for me to birth in, but if not, I'll prepare the space in my small house to see if I'd be able to birth there. And, really just grounding into what my dreams were at that point in time. And I'm pretty connected with the midwifery doula community here because of the work that I do with acupuncture. So I had a list of people. And I will say I interviewed 9 midwives before I chose the one that I felt like was going to be perfect for me. I really wanted to feel confident in that space of, okay, I've never done this before, and I want somebody here who not only has done it before, but who I really trust with my whole life
Yeah.
and with the life of my baby, and to hold my husband and my family as we're, going through this process.
I love that. And I love that for you that you had 9 midwives to choose from. I mean, I love that you interviewed all of them, and I love that you had that opportunity because a lot of people don't have that depending on where they live. So
Right.
you live in a very good spot for home birthing.
Yeah, I felt very fortunate, especially because midwives aren't licensed in my state here, so it is tricky to find them.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful that you had that opportunity to meet 9 and really tune into because it's so important, as we know, to feel so safe on all
Mhm.
levels, not like just like the physical, medical life and death one, right? That's just one little part in the big scheme of
Yeah.
things of safety, right?
Hmm.
So love that for you. Okay, so you knew right away you wanted a home birth. Did you do any other kind of prep that you'd like to share before we dive on into the birth story?
Um, well, I did in my pregnancy, I didn't do any testing, so I didn't get any tests done, and I that felt really right for me. I know it's not right for everybody, but I just had a strong feeling that the pregnancy was strong. We could hear the baby's heartbeat from very early on. And so everyone thought I was pregnant with twins. So that was surprising. I'm a fairly small person, and my belly was very big. And when they were measuring my belly, I kept measuring quite far ahead. And people would stop me and say, "Oh, we think you're having twins." And at a certain point, my midwife got a little nervous, like, "Okay, if you're having twins, we're going to need a second person there. So would you please get an ultrasound?" And so I got an ultrasound at 34 weeks. That was my one and only ultrasound. And uh, it did not show 2 babies, but it did show that my baby was in the Frank Breech position, and her head was on my liver.
Mm,
And so it contributed to a lot of my nausea and sickness throughout the pregnancy.
mm,
Uh, so that was I felt like I had a vision of I didn't want any testing done unless the midwife recommended it.
yeah,
And so that was also something for me that was important, was to trust her,
yeah.
because I do have more of an alternative medical mindset, to trust her to say, okay, Phoebe, it's time. It's time for us to go to the doctor. It's time for you to get this test. And I just knew at that point wholeheartedly that I could trust her, whatever she thought was right.
And that's what you want. That's what you want from your birth support. That trust that if she says something that it's truly for you, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
love that. Okay, so you have a
Yeah.
breech baby on board, and she was happy with that. She didn't feel like that was a problem for her.
She wasn't stressed out. She had worked with David Hayes before, and he's in my area. And so she had done some breech birth. My midwife was not concerned about my baby being breech. She had worked with David Hayes before in Breech Without Borders and had assisted in breech births, was up to date on her breech education. And interestingly enough, a year before I gave birth, she also had a woman who was breech, who had a successful breech birth. So I was able to connect with that woman and ask her questions about how my midwife did. And so I felt confident, and my midwife said that as long as I was confident, she was very confident.
Beautiful. That's amazing. What an amazing story. I love that so much. More home birth midwives who are confident in breech, please, and twins and just all
Yes.
variations. We need you so much.
Yes. Yes, and I loved it that she was equally as confident if I was having twins.
Mm,
That just it really allowed me to build more confidence in myself just seeing her confidence.
yes. Beautiful. All right, shall we dive on into your birth story?
Yes. Yes.
Mm,
Um, so my birth started with, I would say, like a very soft labor. I think it can be quite difficult to tell when you're actually in labor. But I had been taking a few like nervine sleep herbs to help me sleep at the end of my pregnancy, just knowing that I wanted to go into my birth very well rested and very nourished. Um, and I just had this feeling like I told my midwife, February 27th, something's going to happen. I just know it. Um, so she said, okay, I'll book my calendar. I'll make sure that that I'm around if you need me. And so I woke up on February 27th at 3 in the morning from a very deep sleep. And I was having a deep dream and I woke up, and that's not usual for me. And I could feel the first contraction. And I'd been having the Braxton Hicks contractions for several weeks, so I could tell that this was different.
mm,
There was a strength to it that was really beautiful, and it woke me up. And I laid in bed for quite a while because it was 3 in the morning. I laid in bed for probably about 3 more hours, just having these little contractions around every 30 minutes. So then at 6:30, I hopped up out of bed and had this joy to me. And I went and I made a giant plate of scrambled eggs for myself. Like, I just ate so much food. I was so hungry. Um, and my husband has 3 kids, so we have 3 teenagers in the house with us. And I told everybody, okay, it's happening. I don't know when I'm going to give birth, but I know for sure I'm in labor. Like, this has started. I'm going to eat, I'm going to drink water, but just know this is the space that I'm in right now.
mm. Beautiful. I love that so much. That is definitely an early sign of labor approaching or starting, as being ravenous and we just want to eat a lot. I guess
Yeah.
building up that energy reserve for the big
Yeah.
labor. Yeah.
Yeah, and my midwife had told me when your contractions start, please try to eat as much and drink as much as you can. And so I took that advice to heart. I must have eaten 4 or 5 eggs that morning and just started drinking lots and lots of water. And just really felt into the space. It felt like a very watery place to be inside of myself, like this ethereal, grounded but ungrounded space that felt so different from the rest of pregnancy. It felt like really approaching this very important event.
Mm, beautiful. The yin, isn't it? The yin
Yes,
flow, the feminine.
yes, and just this flowy yin feeling. So I really just wanted to like ride that wave. And I wanted to also, I'm a very productive person. And so I really took to heart, okay, don't change your day when your labor starts. Just continue on with what you were going to do. Um, and I had 2 friends who really wanted to take some pregnancy photos of me. And I had told them, like, okay, February 27th, that's the last day you get because I think I'm going to have the baby. And so a friend of mine who has a toddler and another friend came and they met me at my house and they brought flowers and this was maybe 10 a.m. at this point. And I told them, okay, I'm in labor, so I might be a little off, but this will be a beautiful time to take some photos. And so we walked down, there's a creek by my house. And so we walked, maybe the 3-minute walk to the creek, which felt like eternity. It felt so long. And we got down to the creek and they decorated me with flowers and took these beautiful photos that are really lovely to look at now because they took a lot of the photos during the contraction and I just look like I'm in a different world. And they had me sit by this beautiful maple tree that was really big and strong, and they had me sit with it against my back. And so I had the strength of this maple tree behind me really to hold me up as I was laboring. And then we made some offerings to the water just for a blessed birth.
Mm.
And about an hour into that, I noticed I couldn't really listen or speak to them. Like the communication had stopped. They would ask me questions and I was quite distracted. And I said, okay, it's definitely time for me to go home now. So they walked me back home, and it was beautiful to have that experience. But I definitely at that time felt like, okay, I don't want to continue on with the rest of what I have planned for my day. I think that was it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So they returned home and you came back to your little cave. What happened?
Yeah, so at that point in time, we had moved into our new house. So my husband had completed the building project 10 days before I gave birth. So I had 10 days to nest in my space. A lot of my friends were stressed out for me, but I was able to at least get everything that I needed set up and really start to envision my birth space at that point. So I actually spent that time for a couple of hours there just with my husband and the kids and just prepping my space and eating and drinking. That was really, those were my main goals for the day at that point in time.
Mm.
And so it just consisted, like, that's just how things went from about 11 a.m. until close to 3 p.m.
Mm. Wow, beautiful. And what did your space look like?
Oh, well, it was quite open because we hadn't completed moving everything in. Our home was right next door to our other home. And so there was a lot of space there. It was very important for me to have a bathtub. The bathtub was there, and the bathing room was very beautiful. And my space was just, I wanted an openness to it, lots of windows to see nature, and just an openness to the space so I could move around as I liked. My husband had also set up a hammock in our bedroom so that I could be in the hammock or use the hammock to take the weight of my belly at any point. And he had also set up some ropes around for me to be able to pull on. So I felt like I had kind of created a little birthing center in my house. I had my yoga ball, I had a mat to be on, I had a tub to be in, I had a comfortable bed. And I just I had a birth altar that some friends of mine helped me to create. And so that had beautiful stones and shells and feathers. And I just felt really supported in my space, even though there wasn't that much in there.
I love that. That's perfect. That was plenty. What a
Yeah,
beautiful
that's how I
opportunity.
felt.
I mean, it's a beautiful opportunity to have this, blank canvas for you to just create your birth space in. I think it all kind of came together perfectly, really.
Yeah, it definitely felt that way. It felt just so on time, so perfect.
Beautiful. So after 3 o'clock, something happens because you said that was the
Yeah.
prepping time before that.
Yeah, one goal that I had had for my birth was to be in a sauna. I I had learned from a lot of people in South America that sometimes they'll get into a temescal or into a sweat before they have the baby, and it's typically not an intense space. It's a very low level of heat that's being used, but just this idea of opening. And just my background with Chinese medicine told me if I can be warm in this space, I can relax my muscles and that will make it easier.
Mm.
So I became kind of fixed on this idea. Uh, and so thankfully we have a wood-fired sauna nearby. And so my husband went and he lit the sauna at 4 o'clock and I was able to get there, or I'm sorry, at 3 o'clock, and I was able to get there at about four.
Mm.
Um, and at 4 o'clock, my husband and our stepdaughter, who at the time was 19, I really wanted her present for the birth. So the three of us went into the sauna together. And I started off with a strength of, okay, I'm in labor. I'm this, big, beautiful mama, and I'm here with this warmth. And then it started to feel quite intense. It definitely, the heat intensified the labor quite quickly. So I was in that space.
I can imagine. So how hot was the sauna?
Well, I can tell you in Fahrenheit. I don't really know it
Yeah,
in
tell me.
Celsius, but it was about 120, maybe
Wow.
100, 120. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was stepping outside of the sauna quite often,
Mhm.
and splashing myself with some cold water and drinking a lot of water in the sauna.
Yeah.
And I was laying down in the coldest part of the sauna,
Yeah.
with my back towards the heat source,
Nice.
really just to start loosening things. But
Mhm.
it did feel hotter than I had anticipated it feeling.
Yeah, I could imagine like about maybe like 105, 106 would have been perfect. Just like that, just a little bit warmer than your body because you get hot in labor as well. So
Yes.
yeah, it would have been intense with that. But I can also imagine like the fire, like so cozy. I'm loving your birth story. I'm like, oh my God, it's delicious every step of the way.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was totally naked in the sauna. That was kind of the point in time in my labor when I decided like clothes were not, they were not a part of my labor anymore. And so I was grateful to, just be in a space where that felt very safe, where I could just be totally naked in the sauna with my back towards the heat and just breathing. I couldn't speak much at that point. The only thing I really said was, okay, I'm ready to go home. Um, so I was in there for, I mean, time gets so fuzzy, but I was in there for around 45 minutes or an hour.
Wow, long time.
Yeah. 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 And when we left, it's about a 5-minute drive from my house. And I was in the front seat of the car with the seat completely back. And I just felt every bump. And I could really feel that the labor before the sauna and the labor after the sauna were two very different labors.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at that point in time, we returned back to the house. And so we got back to the house, I would guess it was around 5:30. And at 6 o'clock, I lost my mucus plug and it started to come out. And it was just a little bit. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't really know what to expect from the mucus plug, even all of my research and preparation. It's a very unique phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah, it's really the mucus plug can really drop at any time as you kind of come to term. And it doesn't necessarily mean that labor is close. It can be. It can happen also days before. It can regrow again and then
Yes.
drop again. So the mucus plug, but when you're obviously in labor, that obviously means, okay, your cervix is opening so that there's room for the plug to drop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I should say that I had a midwife and I had a doula. I was primarily interested in having a midwife there, but I do live in a little bit of a rural location, so my midwife was about an hour away. So I had been texting her, letting her know what was happening at this point. But just so she and I felt very comfortable with everything, I also had a doula, and my doula lived 15 minutes away. So that was a little level of security for me. So at 6 o'clock, my mucus plug started, and like I said, it was very, very mild but noticeable. So at that point, I let my midwife know, and she said the same thing that you said. Oh, it could be days. Don't worry about it. Just stay in your process, continue eating and drinking and resting. And so I did. And then over that hour, throughout, between 6 and 7, the mucus plug really started coming out. And I was very surprised at, how much is there. And like I said, it's very unique. So that was happening for about an hour, and my contractions were really starting to intensify at that point. So my midwife recommended, your doula's 15 minutes away. Just have her come over and check you out. She can always just go home. She doesn't have to stay there. So my doula came over, And she said, okay, labor's definitely started, but it could be a couple days. So, please just rest up. And she showed me some rebozo techniques and ways to put my belly on top of the hammock to take the weight and some exercises to do. She had me at that point start doing the miles circuit. Um, so I'm in that part of my labor. And then at that point, as my doula was there, things really started to intensify, and I began to throw up with my intense contractions. So at that point, my doula said, okay, this could be a while. I'm going to go home and get some rest. My guess is, in the next day or so, you'll probably be having the baby.
Oh.
Um, so that was a little interesting for me. I did kind of feel like, oh, I thought it was happening now, just with how intense it was feeling. So at that point, I really just tried to ground into relying on myself. One thing that I really did with my pregnancy was I tried to prepare as if a midwife and a doula would not be there.
Beautiful.
Um,
Love that.
yeah, I tried to prepare as if I was having a free birth
Mm.
and had hoped that it wouldn't be a free birth.
Yeah.
So I was starting to think to myself, I don't know that everyone else is picking up on the signals that I'm picking up on, but I'm feeling that labor is coming quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing I just wanted to jump back to is when I found out that my baby was Frank Breech at 34 weeks,
Mm.
I did everything to try to flip the baby.
Mm.
Um, I was doing inversions, the miles circuit, spinning babies. Like I said, I'm an acupuncturist, so I was getting acupuncture and moxibustion and doing my own moxibustion and praying and doing whatever I could. And we knew at this point in the labor that my baby still had not turned. The baby was still in the Frank Breech position.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my feeling was that when you said you threw up, I was like, I wouldn't I'm curious to what she saw. Obviously, I wasn't there and you have your internal experience, but sometimes I guess depends who you are as a woman too, how expressive you are in labor. When someone looks at you, maybe they think, "Oh, she looks too calm," or she's too, I don't know how you labor, but I'm curious
Mhm.
to why. So at this point, you're having kind of regular strong contractions, are you? And you were vomiting, and she still thought that it could be days?
Yeah, I think that I don't really know. I think that maybe I was coming off calm with it. I think also things were happening quickly, and there was a thought like, oh, breech birth doesn't typically happen this quickly. Um, I
That's not
I
true.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't really certain on like the feeling behind it all.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely am quick to throw up, so I think that was
Okay.
something she was taking into account. Was like, okay, this could just be Phoebe being Phoebe. But I also my contractions were not regular, and that was another sign for her. I would have a very intense contraction, and then it would last for maybe 45 seconds.
Mm.
And then I would have a minute break and another contraction, and then a 5-minute break and another contraction. So there was an irregularity both to the amount of time between my contractions and to the amount of intensity,
But
where I'd
that's
go,
also breach.
right,
So I
right,
guess as a doula, I don't know, of course, at all how long she's been a doula and what she's
right.
experienced. But if you're looking for kind of the normal pattern, you can't when it comes to breech babies.
Yes, and that was something I didn't feel like I was that prepared on. I know that my midwife had a lot more experience with breech than my doula. And I will say at this point too, um, the labor was still feeling as I had anticipated it to feel, minus the regularity. So
Yeah.
my doula at that point said, I really don't think that the baby's going to come until more regularity has been established between the intensity of your contractions. And she said, I'm 15 minutes away. I'm just going to go home, take a little nap, and I'll be back whenever you need me to be here, even if you need me, just to check you out. Totally let me know. So at that point, I had called my midwife and just let her know, okay, things are, at that point, I couldn't even call her. My husband called her, and just told her, okay, things are happening here. And she said, please just relax. get Phoebe to watch TV or something, like get her mind off of it, just have her relax, have her drink some tea, just have her start to get really calm in her body. So I couldn't really at that point. I was so in the labor. My husband tried to put on TV, and I was like, "This is not for me. I need to just be by myself." So I started wandering, into like dark spaces of the house and really feeling like all of the animal birth videos that I had watched. I felt like a mama dog or something, like needing to be in a darker space. So at that point, I started lowering all the lights and just having there be as little sound as possible. I had thought I would have this birth playlist, and I had all this music picked out, and when it came to, I didn't want any noise at all. I wanted pure silence and darkness.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you think beforehand and what you actually need. And everyone's going to be so different with that too.
Right.
Like, so prep everything, but also know that you might not use anything.
Exactly. Exactly. That was an important thing for me. And also to have not a birth plan, but to have birth goals. That really helped me just to really accept the flexibility and the fluidity that is birth.
Yeah.
So that I, in my own mind, wasn't fixed on, oh, but it has to be this way. Obviously, I would like I wanted a home birth, but if the hospital is needed, the hospital is needed. I think that it's
Yeah.
important to be able to think on your feet and to just follow your intuition and your body in those
So good.
spaces.
That's so important. That's such a beautiful key wisdom because I think my experience is that women who are very rigid in what they want, um, sometimes they they can't reach that because of the rigidity in that desire, and nothing else is, you know, good at all. It's actually maybe catastrophe if anything else happens, kind of thing. And what
Right.
tends to happen is that you manifest that, and you have to be in that yin, flowy, feminine, receptive, surrendered state. And
Yes.
surrender is an active choice, right?
Oh,
I feel like so many people are so like, oh, when you say surrender, oh, I hate that word, or that's so passive. It's not passive, it's an active choice. I'm surrendering to the
right.
mighty force coming through me, right?
Right. Right, exactly. And one of the mantras that I say in life anyways, but that was really coming to me with the birth is that suffering is the friction of resistance.
Yes.
As we resist that letting go, that's when we suffer.
Hmm.
So just being able to connect with that. And also, I think in my own life, having a practice of um, pain is a beautiful teacher. And I think that when we ignore the teachings that pain is trying to teach us, we get into a more negative spiral. And so trying to stay as present as I could with the pain and even viewing it more as intensity, that was very important for me to just stay grounded with that.
Yes, absolutely. And that saying, what you resist persists. If you can
Yes.
remember that in labor, what you resist persists. So if you're in
Yeah.
a space where you're like resisting the contractions or the pain or whatever it is that you're resisting in that moment, knowing that you'll just stay in that longer as you resist it.
Yes, exactly. So I felt very present with that. And so over the next few hours, so my doula came at 7. I imagine she left around 8 p.m. And my contractions just continued to intensify. We're having what I would consider to be 10 out of 10 contractions, followed by 2 out of 10 contractions.
Mm.
Um, very, very bizarre. I tried to lay down and I couldn't. I would immediately jump up, and I really was preferring the hands and knees position for my labor, but I noticed laying on my back was not good. And
Mm.
at that point is when I really started to realize like I was having back labor. It didn't, I thought labor might feel like, very intense menstrual cycle, cramping, even like the Braxton Hicks that I had been feeling, but it didn't. For me, it was all in my back. And so I would say from about my mid back down to my tailbone felt during those intense contractions like electricity was flowing through, just this really rigid and intense pain that I was quite surprised by. I did not expect it to be in my back. So that was a new thing for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing, all women feel it differently because of how different we are, obviously, physically, but also how baby's lying, of course, that plays into it too.
Hmm. Yes, and so I felt like I'd prepared myself for breech birth and I'd read about back labor, but I kind of had this thought like, oh, that won't be me. I won't have back labor. I don't really have to worry too much about it. So at that point, my back pain started to get, pretty strong, and I asked my husband, would you please get a bath going for me? I really need to get into the bath and at least just relax my muscles a bit.
Mm.
So at that point, he drew a bath for me, a nice hot bath. It was February, so definitely a little chilly. And so he drew this bath for me, and I was able to get into it. And that was magical. I got in, and I was really able to relax and just to let my back do what it needed to do. The spasms and the contractions that were happening that were in my back, just allowing them to relax. So again, I wasn't having, my suffering be the friction of the resistance. I was not resisting, I was really giving in, but I didn't feel that I could give in to those sensations when I was out of the water.
Yeah. Yeah, water is magical like that. I feel especially for back pain to just, yeah, sit down and just have your tailbone and your sacrum down in the hot water. Mm.
Hmm. And I really resisted having a water birth. My midwife had really said, okay, I think you should have a water birth. And I just didn't feel it. I feel more grounded when I'm, like with the earth than
Mm.
I do when I'm in water. And it never felt like how I wanted to birth. So even though it was recommended and my midwife said, okay, I'll have the tub in the car if you change your mind, I just knew that, yes, I'd love to utilize the bathtub, but that I didn't want to give birth in the water.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm in this hot bath. I'm starting to relax. And, I'm in this very dark space. I turned off all the lights and was in the bath, just in the dark, really, feeling into the nighttime because at this point it's about 11 p.m. Um, and I feel something interesting and I hear this pop from under the water. And that's when my waters broke. And that felt amazing. That was just the most joyful feeling, that release of pressure.
Yeah.
Um, it was very cool too to hear it, even though my body was underwater, to hear that sound. And just to feel like my waters breaking into the waters. It felt very mystical and magical and very, very grounding.
Mm. Beautiful. I love that. And did it
Mhm.
intensify after that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So as I said before, I had ditched clothing around 3 or 4 p.m. Um, which, became difficult as all the waters are breaking out of me. So I chose to be on a yoga mat with a towel and got out of the tub because it was very intense and I needed to move a little bit more. So at that point, I was utilizing the ropes and the hammocks and really the birth ball. The birth ball was my best friend during my labor. Just the ability to roll forward and have the ball take the weight of my belly was really lovely. And just it felt nice to me that I was able to create a space where the waters were just able to flow. Having towels and having things prepared where I could really just not have any anxiety about it, but just allow that process to really, really continue. Um, and so, yes, everything began to intensify at that point in time. And I woke up my stepdaughter and said, hey, I really need you to start timing my contractions because I don't know what's happening, but we've definitely like jumped into another level of labor here. So she woke up, got out of bed, and started timing my contractions, and they were wild. As I said, they had been irregular, but I was having at this point 2.5 minute long contractions, with back labor. So they were quite intense. And then I would have a few that were very mellow. But when I look at the log of, of all of my contractions, they're just all over the place. So I'm looking through and, at this point, I can't make sense of numbers or time or anything. I was totally in a different space. But my husband, thankfully he knew what was going on and he looked at it and said, "Okay, I'm gonna screenshot these and send them to the midwife, but I'm also going to call her and call the doula." And our thought was, okay, the doula's 15 minutes away. That will be really lovely. She'll be able to get here and just be with me, and the midwife, who has an hour commute, will have time to get ready and get here and hopefully be here for the birth. So the midwife jumped in the car. She saw those numbers and said, "Okay, I'll be right there." And she told me she was just going as fast as she possibly could. She made it to my house. I think she said her drive ended up being like 45 minutes. So she was definitely going fast. And when she got there, well, I guess I should say that was about 11:30 p.m. when we called them. And we couldn't get a hold of the doula. So that was a little bit stressful for me, as she had just been there not that long before. So we called and called maybe 14 times, just like calling from different numbers, just trying to get a hold of her. So a big part of my birth was having acceptance, just having acceptance on whatever's happening in this moment is happening for a reason, and there's nothing I can do to change it. So best not to fret and to be upset about it. So I just said, okay, I know the midwife's on her way. That's okay. As I said before, I prepared myself as if it was a free birth. So I was prepared to give birth just on my own if I had to. So that next little chunk of time is so watery. I don't remember much of it except being in the intensity. And again, darkness and silence, darkness and silence. So at 1:30 in the morning, my midwife bursts through the door and she's there and she's ready and she's got her kit and everything and she's there to be with me. And 5 minutes later, the doula came as well. So I think just having that acceptance of, okay, if neither of them show up, it's also okay. And then to have both of them show up right at 1:30 in the morning, I'm very, very deep in the birth space. My midwife asked me some questions and checked out my body a little bit, and just said, "Okay, I would like to try to slow your contractions down." And so she got some herbs that were mostly, for any herbalists who are listening, it was mostly like nervine herbs. So herbs like passiflora and hops and skullcap, things just really designed to help me calm and help me to sleep potentially.
Mm.
And so my midwife sat nearby to my bed and just asked me to please try to lay down and see if I could sleep a little bit, see if I could rest my body. At this point, I had been throwing up with most of my intense contractions, and they were starting to feel a little bit concerned. Like, does she have enough fluids in her? Has she eaten enough food? So there was definitely a, can we feed you more? And I was in a space of, I don't want any food, but couldn't keep water down and was really just trusting that I had nourished my body enough ahead of time that I was not in a concerning position then.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had earlier that day, of course, done that. So that's so good. So important. Key of wisdom there.
Yes. So my midwife gave me this dose of these herbs and I laid down and it didn't really make a big difference. And so, she knows that I'm an herbalist, and so I'm very familiar with herbs. And she asked if she could give me another dose. And I said, yes, I think I'm in a position of really being able to take that in. So she gave me a second dose of the herbs, maybe 30 minutes later. And I was actually able to lay down at that point. My husband was sleeping in the bed, just trying to rest up himself. And so I got into bed with him and just tried my best to sleep. Now, every time I had a contraction, I didn't want to be on my back or my side. And I would actually like almost jump up into hands and knees position for the contraction So I was really just resting for these bizarre periods of time where it was sometimes 45 seconds and sometimes 5 minutes. But at least I was able to calm down. And it seemed as though, even though they were irregular the entire time, that my contractions, the space between them started to lengthen after she gave me those herbs. So I did feel very grateful that she was so knowledgeable with that.
Amazing.
Mhm. Yes. And then um, let's see. So at that point in time, I'm just trying to relax myself. The doula was giving me a back massage, which was incredible. So, so wonderful to have that physical and emotional support. Um, they were singing me the song that I had hoped for my birth, which is it's also like a mantra, just about letting go and allowing things to happen in their own time. And really, that was kind of that was something that really was sticking with me, was how can I allow this to be on my baby's time and on my body's time and on nature's time, and not to get rigid and to think, okay, but it has to happen at this point. My waters have broken. I must, give birth by this point in time. But just allowing all of that anxiety to be free from me. And so it was really pleasant having the two calming women there to just keep me grounded, keep bringing me back to myself, and allowing me to really be confident in my body the whole time. So we're in that space together, all of us. My husband and my stepdaughter have gone to sleep, and we're all assuming it could be a long labor. And the midwife she's setting up her bed in the next room, um, and I start to just wander, and I really noticed that I was wandering around my house. Really starting to feel like very constipated and really feeling like, oh, like I had to go to the bathroom, and having this really strong feeling of that. And mostly just, I would say, dealing with it myself. Like I wasn't communicating that much, but I was just wandering and trying to make sense of these sensations that weren't making sense to me. And then at one point, um, I broke down and started crying and started feeling so concerned that I was doing it wrong. That something, because my labor didn't look the way that all the labors in books looked, that I was doing something wrong, and that because my contractions weren't regular, I was doing something wrong. Because the labor was happening in my back, I must have been doing something wrong. And that's really when I was so grateful to have my midwife there to just tell me, like, no, let's just relax and ground into you and yourself, and you know what to do. Just you don't even have to think about it. You know what to do. And just even a hug from her, oh, it was so wonderful. um, and just returned me back to myself and my body at that point.
It's just invaluable to have a wise woman who have seen how many hundreds of births, maybe even thousand, um,
Mm-hmm.
to just look at you and go like, "This is fine. You're normal.
Yeah.
This is normal." Um, I wish that for all women to have that companion there to really
Mm-hmm.
reassure you as you most likely were transitioning, maybe.
Yes, and I was so grateful for the preparation I had done. I had taken a birth class, and even though I work in women's health and pediatrics, and I'm even trained to do acupuncture during birth. I was unfamiliar with the transition phase.
Mhm.
And, I had known of it, but the birth class really helped me to understand the signs of the transition phase. So even internally, I had this thought of like, ooh, I'm in the transition phase. I wonder if anybody else is noticing this. And I have no idea if they noticed or not. Nobody said anything. But at that point in time, I returned back to being on hands and knees with the ball and really still in my process, but I was migrating. I was walking around with the yoga mat and the yoga ball, and I decided I wanted to be in my hallway. Why? I have no idea. But my midwife and my doula met me there, and when I told them, I said, I've been feeling as though I'm needing to go to the bathroom a lot. Is there something you can help with? Something that you could do to help me with that? I had had a little bit of an obsession with the spiritual midwifery book. And, they talk about giving women enemas during labor. And I know that that's not done much anymore, but in my head, I was like, oh, that sounds amazing right now. That would be so relieving of my body. And so at that point, I started feeling like, okay, I don't really know how much longer I can handle all of this. So I turned to them and said, do you think it's going to be days? Like, what are we thinking here? And they were like, well, we really can't tell. We really don't know. We're here whenever it happens, it's going to happen. Like, you're okay. Don't stress. And at that point, my doula said, typically when I hear women say that they have to go to the bathroom, that signals that your pushing stage might be starting. Your birth might be happening quicker than we think. And so that brought some reassurance to me. And also, it was so amorphous. How do you know what's going to happen at that point in time? You just have to really let go. And so maybe 5 to 10 minutes later, I said to them, I think I have to push. And they said, oh, we don't know. Like, it might be a little early. You might not, like, don't stress your body or anything. Just go with it. And right after I said that, my body started to push and I started to really yell. And it was a beautiful yell, like a beautiful, vibrant, like straight from the core of my being, this just loud sound of all the energy that I had been experiencing through the first part of my labor suddenly being liberated. So I was feeling very, very good at that point in time. I really, after the transition, noticed a huge shift. I was able to drink water. I stopped vomiting. I felt pretty good. My contractions were no longer feeling, there wasn't the intensity shifted and it became energy that I was able to work with instead of energy that I was just trying to get through. And at that point in time, I said to my midwife, like, do you think that you could draw a bath for me? Do you think I could get into the bath? And she said, absolutely. Um, and so she drew me a bath that was magical. And at this point in time, they're having to help me get up and help me to walk to the bath. And as I got into the bath, again, I had that sensation as I did the first bath that I took. So I should say at this point, it's about 6 in the morning. So, that time that's lapsed between 1:30 when the midwife came and 6 o'clock now was spent really just feeling into the contractions. The transition happened around somewhere around 5:30 in the morning. So at 6 o'clock is when they said the pushing started happening through me. And then I got into this hot bath. And again, even though I had resisted so much birthing in water, I really just felt that my baby needed me to be in this space, to be in the calmness that a bath provides and this warmth. Yeah. So I got into this hot bath and was very confused as to what happened next. All of a sudden, something shot out of my body. I was no idea what it was. It turns out that the baby's pelvis was inside of my pelvis. And when I had a contraction, all of the meconium shot out. Oh. And wow, what a feeling that was. And I had so much confusion. I had no idea what was happening. I couldn't tell what was going on. And I started to feel nervous. Like, did something bad just happen? What's going on? And my midwife was there just, saying, oh, this is great. No worries at all. This is super wonderful. Like, her pelvis or the baby's pelvis is there. And, we're in the labor process. And, I felt actually a big relief in my body once that started to happen. And my midwife had never done an internal exam of me, which was kind of my wishes. I wanted as little involvement as possible, just really trusting my body, but wanting to have somebody there in case anything happened. So at that point in time, she had me start feeling for the baby myself, and just communicating with her about what I was feeling. And so eventually I started to feel the baby. And then I started to cry, saying, I don't want to give birth in a tub. I don't want to give birth in this tub. And she said, oh, no worries. You let me know when it feels close and we'll get you out of the tub. And I said, okay, please get me out now. And we may need to run because I am feeling that it is happening right now. And so the midwife and the doula got me out of the tub, and, we kind of shuffle fast walked over towards my bed. And they had set up this beautiful birthing space just for me to give birth there. Um, and so I came out of the bath, shuffled over there, got to the birthing spot, and they had prepared me for the different positions that I might need to be in to birth Breech. And at this point, they're using the Doppler, they're taking my blood pressure. Everything is looking really good, so there's no concerns there. The baby's heart rate has been consistent through the whole birth. So they were feeling confident. Now, I should also say that we had a breech expert who was going to be coming to my birth. And I had to come to terms with the fact that he was not going to make it to the birth. My midwife kept saying, oh, we called him, he's on his way. And I don't know how to explain it, but I just knew that he was not going to make it. And again, that bringing me back to that place of acceptance of, if I have to birth without the breech expert here, that's okay. And at that point, I really felt it. I felt like this is okay. And I felt grateful that I was able to trust myself in that moment.
That's so beautiful. Okay, so was that like an obstetrician or who was that expert?
It was David Hayes, and so he was ready to be there and to be with me at the birth. I actually hadn't met him at that point in time because everybody kind of expected me to give birth later. I'm not really sure why, but there was just a feeling, and I kept saying, I think it's going to happen earlier. Um, but so I hadn't met him yet. So but I had talked with him quite a bit, and he understood what was happening. He had trained my midwife, so he felt like even just his presence there would be great. His idea was he hoped to just sit in the corner and not do anything at all and just be a witness to the birth. But yeah, I definitely knew that he was not going to make it at that point in time when I got over to my birth space. And I should say, for people who don't know, David Hayes has worked with Breech Without Borders for a long time and is an OB. And so he was one of the people I had been listening to and hearing, some talks that he had done on how breech birth is normal and when frank breech is beneficial, and knowing my baby was frank breech, it was nice. I felt like I was going to have somebody there who had instilled confidence in me during my pregnancy and had total acceptance that he was not going to be there. And maybe it was beneficial and beautiful, and maybe I just didn't need another man other than my husband to be there. So I was just really sitting with all of that acceptance. And then we made it over to the birthing station, and they said, okay, you got to be on hands and knees. Let's do this. And I felt very forceful. At this point through my pushing, I've been yelling and hollering and really just feeling like very primal and feeling completely within my power as a woman and as a mother, and feeling just that knowledge that I know what's happening. I'm connected right now to myself and to my baby. And at this point, I trust myself first and foremost. So when they told me to get on my hands and knees, I I felt very resistant. And I said, I actually don't want this. I would like to squat. And they said, oh, Phoebe, you've been laboring a lot. It's been an intense back labor. Like, we really think that you might need a little bit more support. And I said, I really want to squat. And they said, okay. So they had my husband sit on the bed across from me and put his arms out. And so his arms were out, and I grabbed onto his arms to really steady me. And my midwife put her hands on my low back. And so, um, I was squatting there, and that's where I began to give birth, was in that squat position.
Mm, beautiful. How primal. I love
Yeah.
that. And that's the thing, you might have preconceived ideas as a birth worker or as a mama birthing as well, going like, oh, I should be in this position because this is best for X, Y, Z. But it's always that internal feeling that is the most potent and powerful and true. So as women, we need to claim that. And you did. I love that.
Yeah, thank you. And it just felt to me like the right way to birth the baby for me. And, it felt so nice being supported both by my husband and the midwife, just physically helping to support me, even though my body felt so strong at that point. Um, I just felt supported and loved, and that was wonderful for me to be able to relax and to ground into that sensation.
Mm.
And so at that point, the baby started coming very quickly. And with the breech baby, she's rumping. Um, so the baby started rumping, and I had the ring of fire with her rump, which is, I imagine, different than it is with a head down baby because the rump is so much squishier and, it can be smaller. Um, so I was really happy to, just for anybody who listens who's having a breech birth, it was very helpful for me to watch videos of breech birth, both successful breech birth and to know when something might be going wrong, and to have my husband watch it. My husband's three other kids had also been home births, and so he was very familiar with a home birth with a head down baby, but he was shocked watching the breech birth videos just at how different the birth looks. So I was grateful that he saw it because he was not concerned. He was educated as well. So I got into, my squatting position, the baby's rumping. I'm having the intensity of that ring of fire, but also I imagine a little bit less intense than if the head was there. So then the baby starts to come out, and it was just perfect, a perfect, like textbook breech birth. Her legs flopped down. She had great muscle tone. We started seeing her chest expanding. Her color was good. Everything was just perfect, it seemed. And I took like a deep breath at one point as she was coming out, and my midwife said, "You got to push the rest of the baby out." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right." Like I almost lost track of reality in that point because you're just so intensely with this. So she came out, and when she came out, her right hand was against her head like this when she came out. But we had no shoulder dystocia or anything like that. I felt so fortunate. The midwife didn't have to touch the baby at all as she was coming out. Um, and so from rump to head took about 1 minute. She was out very quickly. I definitely felt that fetal ejection reflex, but it felt like it happened at a very perfect time. It happened after her rump was out, that it really pushed the baby out of me. And my husband was able to catch the baby as she came out.
That's
It was
so
so special.
beautiful. That's so beautiful. And you know what? That's the thing. Like, just as head down babies, breech babies, most of the time just slip on out. It's all good. Like,
Yeah.
it is a
Mm-hmm.
variation of normal. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we just really need to remember that. It is just a variation of normal and, expect that it's going to be fine, that it's,
Yes.
your baby and your body knows what to do and how to birth itself. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that reflex, that Ferguson reflex that, pushes the baby out when
Mm-hmm.
the head comes really low as it does after the bum is out, that's
Right.
all natural and normal, and your body knows
Mm.
how to do that. You don't have to do
Yes.
anything. You just have to follow your instincts like you did. And that is how we uphold safety, is actually for the woman to really be so in tune with her body and the messages that's coming from your baby and your body. And I loved also how you felt constipated. I mean, I know it was because your baby was coming low, but also your baby needed to poop.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I find that also so fascinating because that saying of like mama toto, like mama and baby are one, like you felt your baby, right? And it is
Mhm.
also super super common for breech babies to poo. But I love that intuition you were feeling, like I'm feeling constipated, and then your baby had a big poo.
I know it felt like we were just one, like that concept of mother baby. We were just one being at that point, and I was really feeling into her, and oh, it was magical.
Oh, that's so precious. And your
Mhm.
husband caught her.
Yes, and that was just so beautiful. And yeah, just really before having the baby, feeling into that whole like breech is just a variation of normal. And a friend of mine had told me, talk to your baby and tell your baby what you would like out of the birth and be in communication before you go into labor. And so one thing I just kept saying to the baby is, okay, I'm going to trust that you're in this position for a reason, and I will birth you in whatever way you need to be birthed. But my one request is when you come out, please, I want to hear a long, like a loud and strong yell from you. Like, I want to hear you. I want your lungs to expand with air, and I want to know that you're okay quickly. And that was my one request from the baby. And sure enough, baby came out with a big, strong holler, and then was happy and content right after that. So as the baby was coming out, the only thing that I would say, I could label it as a complication, but really the birth happened as it needed to happen. But as she was coming out, not sure why, my cord ripped.
Wow.
So the cord ripped, not fully, but it ripped enough that the cord blood started all coming out.
Mm.
It was not a short cord. It was not wrapped around her in any particular way. We're really unsure as to why it happened. I did have a posterior placenta, which is why they suspected my baby might have been breech. So we weren't sure really what was causing this cord to rip. But as she came out, the cord ripped, and so they had to cut the cord immediately. They actually cut the cord before they handed the baby to me, um, which I think has its own beautiful implication of things. And I had hoped to keep the cord intact for a little while, knowing that with a breech baby, you really want them to get the nutrients that are in the cord blood as much as possible and wait for the cord to stop pulsing. And again, that was a birth goal, but not a birth reality. And it actually felt fine in the moment. I thought that I would feel, this concern of, oh, I didn't get to hold my baby before the cord was cut, but it felt perfect.
Mm.
Um, and nobody was concerned. My midwife had seen this happen before.
Mm.
I felt a little concerned at one point, thinking, am I hemorrhaging? Because there was so much blood from the cord, and just having my midwife there reminding me, no, this is okay. This is the cord blood. We
Mm.
are fine. Everything is good. Everything is fine.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, sometimes it happens. It's quite rare, but it happens.
Mhm.
And you just deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my husband was able to cut the cord and catch the baby, cut the cord. So that was quite beautiful. And I should say too, I had never found out if I was having a boy or a girl. And at this point, they hand the baby to me, and I'm just looking at this beautiful baby, and I realize I have no idea if this is a boy or a girl. I have no idea. And I asked the midwife, like, did I have a boy or a girl? She said, oh, that's for you to figure out, Mama. Like, you have the baby in your hands. And I would have been happy no matter what. For me, the goal was just a very successful birth which meant that Mama and baby were healthy and happy. And so I had what I wanted, and I looked, and I had a little baby girl, and she opened up her eyes to greet me and had these giant blue eyes and was just this, perfect little being that I was holding in my hands. And, during the hardest parts of the birth, I had this feeling of, wow, how does anybody do this? This is so challenging, just like this deep respect for everybody who has birthed. Um, and at the same time, just realizing, wow, people wouldn't do this if you didn't get the most, wonderful gift at the end of it. And I just felt like I was greeted with that gift. And I should also say that my baby was born on her due date.
Mm.
which I know is quite rare. She was born at the sunrise, at the new moon, on her due date, during what they called the planetary parade. So all of the planets were like aligning for the day. It was a very bizarre thing, but I know that a lot of women give birth at the full moon, and I was surprised to give birth on the new moon at the sunrise. And it was also so beautiful to have the baby come out right as the sun was rising. And, I had been in that dark space of like the literal dark space of having all the lights out through the whole labor. And then to birth as the light itself from the sun was coming up. It was just this beautiful, symbolic space to be in.
Mm, it is so magical, those early hours of the morning, also as a birth worker to attend a birth and like as we wrap things up and mama baby and families in the bed and you just like maybe leaving and you're driving home and the sun is rising. It's magical time of the day. It is beautiful. I understand your feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, so that just felt, it just felt perfect and special.
Mm.
And so after I birthed the baby, my midwife said, okay, when you start to feel some cramping, just let me know. And that's the placenta coming out. And it took about 15 minutes, I would say, after the birth for the placenta to come out. And, similar to when my water broke, that just felt wonderful. It felt so good having the placenta come out and just really being grateful for this wonderful being that nurtured my baby and that our bodies grew together, and just really greeting this almost like grandmother being that was the placenta and having it come out and just be so beautiful. It was, obviously the birth, you have the baby and that's so much joy, but there was a lot of joy for me with bringing the placenta out as well.
Mm. Beautiful. I love that. Did you do something with the placenta?
Yes, I encapsulated half of it. So immediately it went in to get processed. And then the other half of it, I, during my pregnancy, had woven this wool bag. And as I wove the bag, I was putting prayers and intentions of all the females in my lineage on both sides. Ones who I had wonderful relationships with, and ones who I had challenging relationships with, and spoke their names, all the ones that I knew, and said a prayer and said some gratitude. And so this bag for me was like woven of my prayers of my feminine lineage.
Mm.
And I placed the other half of the placenta into that bag. And a tradition that I was taught was to find a tree that's really quite special to you.
Mm.
And as soon as possible after the birth, the husband or the father of the child is to dig down a hole that's as long as their arm
Mm.
and place the placenta at the bottom.
Mhm.
And so my husband did that later that day. And then another part of that is when the umbilical stump comes off, the father places the umbilical stump into the ground, the length of his index finger into the ground above where the placenta is buried. And that I don't know why in some ways all these traditions exist with the placenta, but I really trusted that it was rooting my baby.
Mm.
And so I planted it next to this big, beautiful maple tree, my favorite tree nearby. And I just really felt like, okay, this is a space where my baby will always be able to connect to her root as a human being of where she's from, and ground herself. And at the same time, I was torn of what to do with the placenta because I really did want to consume part of it. And knowing that I wanted to utilize the medicine of the placenta for my own postpartum time. And so I felt really grateful to be able to use it in both ways. It's what really, I don't know that that feels great for everybody, but for me, that just felt very perfect.
Mm. Well, that's all that matters, that you follow your own intuition and what feels right to you. And everyone's going to be so different there. Personally, I just absolutely love the tradition of burying the placenta. It just feels so right and so
Mm-hmm.
deeply honoring. And yeah, obviously my own personal views on that, but I love that. I love that tradition so much. Feels so right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, if you had a first time mama in front of you right now who's about to have her first baby and she
Yeah.
really wants to have a natural and empowering birth experience, what advice and pearls of wisdoms would you give to her?
Mm. Well, I would definitely tell her to do whatever she needs to do to feel confident in herself and to view the birth as it's first and foremost an experience between you and your baby. And all the support you have there is wonderful. But I think that I don't think my birth would have been as successful if I hadn't been so confident. And I think that confidence comes from preparing yourself as well. You know, I spent many, many hours listening to your podcast and listening to other podcasts, you know, things that specialized with Breech. And, you know, just however, all of these beautiful birth stories, asking people who have positive birth stories to share them with you. I think that's really helpful is to be in that positive state. You're not looking to find the most challenging birth. I think you're looking to really allow yourself to be in that space of this positive birth and really drawing in what you want. And I would recommend, even if you feel like you're very comfortable with birth, I think taking a birth class can really be helpful. I think that knowledge and wisdom are power for us. And I think that you can really allow yourself to be grounded in the space of intuition when you have knowledge as a backup. So I think
Absolutely.
preparation is key.
It is key. I actually just saw a birth worker friend of mine share about how, it is very rampant right now. Like, that, we know everything inside, women have done this throughout the ages. We know how to birth, and we do, and our bodies do. But we're modern women who have been deprived of seeing and knowing these positive stories
Hmm.
for at least a couple of generations, at least, right? Most of us, mother, grandmother, maybe even great grandmother. And we
Hmm.
haven't seen our sisters, our friends, like we haven't seen birth. It's not a part of our culture today, our Western culture. And so I so understand what you're coming from. And I truly also believe that deeply, that like to be able to fully trust in your body, learn about her, like learn about the process of birth,
Hmm.
learn about your womb, learn about your baby and how your baby's going to do the birth dance. It's going to give you so much confidence.
Yes.
That together with, of course, support and everything else. But yes, that first and foremost, before we can just like surrender to the mystery. I think we do as modern women need to feed our brains to
Hmm.
believe truly in the subconscious mind about it. Yeah.
Yes, I think that that was really what allowed me to um, just really face my fears and my anxieties ahead of time. And that's also part of the preparation. And I have a belief that once you and your baby are in a prepared space, that that's when the baby comes. I mean, obviously, we don't know when the baby comes and if they'll be early, late, on time. You know, the babies come on their own time. But I do think that when we're in that prepared space with the confidence, that we can just trust the baby's coming when it's supposed to come. I'm ready. I'm strong. All of the women who've come before me have done this before. I'm okay. I'm held. And my baby and I are in this together.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your beautiful birth story. It's been such a pleasure listening to it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as the Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.